next up, we have David Feinberg. David is a professor at the University of California, Berkeley, and is the president of Advanced MRI Technologies. His research is on MR pulse sequence development and with a particular focus on high resolution layer-fMRI. Over the last few years, he has led the next generation 7T project, in other words, the Feinbergatron or the impulse system. And this scanner has been specifically designed for layer-fMRI and is really the product of collaborations between academia and companies, including Siemens and companies like MR Coiltech. So with that, take it away, David.
Thank you. You can hear me, I assume? Okay, good. Thanks for the introduction. Wow, hearing Reiner talk about his company in the background certainly makes me want to talk a little bit about how AMRIT got started. I just want to say that we're also a small company. We typically have 4 to 6 scientists working. Currently, scientists, I've listed them here, Alex Beckett, Eric Walker, myself, a couple of others. Nicholas Boulant is with us for a year. He's on sabbatical from Neurospin. He's the director of the 11.7T scanner there. And past scientists, you may recognize some of these names, Matthias Gunther and others. So about AMRIT, I have this right here. This, yes. Hearing Reiner talk about how he founded his company and the motivation makes me want to just add a few comments about that. And I always have a sort of a socially acceptable explanation of why we founded it. We wanted to more quickly get innovations into disseminated rather than going through the normal passage through universities and licensing to companies, which take a long time. I have to say, though, that also I started my career in MRI after my PhD and joined a joint university company collaborative laboratory. It was the Diasonics company. It was UCSF, one of the first innovators of clinical MRI scanners. And that was right after my PhD. That was where I learned MRI. And I was interested in many, many different things, but my director of the lab forced us to work on spin echo imaging. And that always sort of frustrated me because there were many experiments that I wanted to do with gradient echo. And not surprising, one of the first sequences I furthered was gradient and spin echo after I left the lab. But that was probably put in my mind to start my own company and have independence doing what I wanted to do. It was started largely with initial funding with patent license exchange with Siemens for MRI scanners, which we got. It was a very favorable relationship back then. I don't think you can do that now with conflict of interest issues, but yeah, it was great. We helped Siemens. I made their echoplanar imaging sequence work quite well, so that helped them get a relationship with MGH. At that time, MGH was with GE, and I got support to do this, get our own scanners, and I had an R1 grant that I took from St. Louis, Washington University, and at that time, one of the directors at NIH highly recommended that I get SBIR grants. I didn't even know what they were, but indeed they've been a source of funding, engaging us in developing pulse sequences and some hardware development. The company has collaborated on many large projects like the Human Connectome project, more recently the Brain Initiative projects to build and develop a 7T scanner that was mentioned. We license pulse sequences to scanner manufacturers. Actually, a venture capitalist who previously, a scientist, Weisskopf, told me when we started our company that we would never really make much money, which he was right, because we had to sell all of our uh, pulse sequences to manufacturers, and they would have control on the price. And so that indeed has been true. We've never made very much money, but we've certainly had control, and as Reiner says, been able to further techniques that we think are important. I think I really got into starting in fMRI was collaborating with CMRR scientists, and that was around 2007, 2008, and that was at that time we were looking at doing columnar and layer fMRI imaging. There's the 3D GRACE sequence that was furthered in that collaboration to a large extent. And the paper by Ullman used 3D GRACE to look at layer fMRI, and some of the images that Reiner just showed from Zimmerman paper again was 3D GRACE, and that was developed further in SBIR grants and has been furthered into products, particularly ASL. And then more recently, we've worked extensively, the scientists at AMRIT, bringing this next-gen 7T scanner to fruition. I don't know what I've not said, but so AMRIT, which is short for Advanced MRI Technologies, moved forward this 3D ASL development, which is now in most of the not 7T, but general clinical scanners of Siemens, and it's proven to be very useful for clinically. So in the Next Gen 7T project was also highly funded by NIH, but the scientists that have worked on the project at Berkeley for the last 5 or 6 years, most of them, or many of them at least, were AMRIT scientists. The Siemens scientists really didn't come over from Germany to work on the scanner for the first several years because of the COVID pandemic. And so AMRIT scientists have worked on testing and adding innovations to several of the products. For example, certainly the MR Coil Tech, we've worked very closely with them. Shahjahan Gunamoni has been really a solid pillar of the development of our project. And the now 64-channel coil that his company is marketing was largely developed at Glasgow and at Berkeley and tested. And without going into all of the details of it, I could say that more recently we have contributed to some of the shielding improvements that have led to higher efficiency of the coil, for example, just in the last year. So I think these collaborations between small companies, as well as with Siemens, have been very beneficial to the field, both for hardware and pulse sequence development. These are some images from the 64-channel coil, and I'll say that this is really the workhorse on our scanner at this time. There were other coils made by university groups. For example, the 128-channel receiver coil that was made by the MGH group and also tested at Berkeley, but it's really not useful. It doesn't function particularly well at all. It doesn't have high enough efficiency. And so really the commercial commitment of a company that Shahjahan brought to this project was essential to have a successful scanner. Let's see if I can keep going here. Just some comparisons between that particular coil, which is now being disseminated throughout the 7T community. You can see the improved signal to noise compared to the Nova Medical coil. So enough of that. Uh, Not to talk too much more, but just to show some of the images. Also to mention that another small company has gotten involved, um, and they're uh, utilizing this coil for magnetic uh, uh, measurements, field probe development with scope. So there is this sort of synergetic uh, collaboration and developments between small companies. It's not all big companies. Okay, so speaking of big companies, Siemens was a major collaboration and did certainly most of the heavy lifting, heavy engineering development for the next gen 7T scanner. It really wasn't done at a university. The gradient coil development receiver system. Um, there certainly was contribution by university scientists, but also almost the entire duration of the project, all of the testing on these coils was done by primarily AMRIT scientists, and also contributed to the change and evolution of the design of this high performance gradient coil, which the 3-layer design is by Peter Dietz and colleagues at Siemens. And this is not to take anything away from their incredible innovative work. Um, right, so what has this led to, and how is this useful for layer fMRI? Certainly we collaborated with Renzo and other scientists. Isa Jakob has been on the advisory committee for our project, but also contributed as well. And certainly many MGH scientists. But you know, this is perhaps one of the highest resolution layer fMRI images in humans to date, and can see quite well in a very thin uh, uh, V1 visual cortex. It's only about 2 millimeter thick, but with these sort of high resolutions, we can begin to see layer activity reliably, and believe that it can be extended to the entire brain at more useful, higher resolutions. That was the goal of the project, to really push resolution, as Renzo mentioned, for layer fMRI and for general investigations, as well as for clinical applications. And certainly the combined advantages of the gradient coil and the larger, higher density arrays is immediately seen in these SMS sequences for whole brain coverage at 0.6 millimeter. That's all I have to show for slides, and I just wanted to thank all of the collaborators on these projects. This recent one to improve the 7T scanner performance for mesoscale imaging. Thanks. I'm happy to take any questions.